We are live.
Okay, everybody, welcome to our session. It's going to be, we'll probably give everybody about a minute or so to get in the room and get settled. So just hang tight for a second. Okay, thank you everybody for joining today. Our presentation today is from Charles Pooley. He is the founder and CEO of Workfolio, which is a company that develops applications for professional visibility and knowledge management for leading consulting, legal staffing, outplacement, and recruiting firms worldwide in more than 90 countries. And let me tell you guys, Charles is a super impressive guy. I actually met him myself kind of at the beginning of the pandemic on LinkedIn. And was so impressed with this product that he had and some new ideas that he had about transforming project pitches and the way in which firms can show their work online. I thought, man, this is something that our clients need to hear more about it. And so here we are today. So today, Charles is going to talk to us a little bit more about technology innovations that are helping firms modernize how they pitch projects in this new virtual world, which we all know we're a part of now. By using co-branded client microsites, team profile intelligence, and interactive case studies. Charles is also going to share some industry trends that are driving the future of how AEC firms stand out in the marketplace and can improve their overall client experience, and also improve win rates, which I think is something that everybody is very interested in right now. If you have any questions, please feel free to use that Q&A function there. And then also we'll have some contact information at the end of the presentation. So you can feel free to contact me or Charles directly, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Okay, well, from here, I'm going to hand it over to him.
Thank you, Christy, for the intro and the opportunity to be here firstly. And I just want to congratulate you and the team for an amazing virtual conference so far. What has been, I'm sure, unprecedented for you guys in the history of conferences, having to pull this together as you have. So honored to be invited to participate, and really excited to share some of the things that we're understanding and doing, and then also really looking forward to the dialogue with firms in the AEC space on some of these topics. So thank you for that. Really my session today is on a topic that I think that it's the topic du jour, really, which is how are we conducting business now in kind of post-COVID-19? What does the landscape look like? And what kinds of tools can we be using now that really the landscape has changed a lot? So before I dive into my content, just a little kind of about me summary. I started Workfolio in 2009, so 11 years ago. When it launched, we got a lot of press for some of the stuff that we were working on. The picture there is me on Bloomberg Television live globally back a number of years ago. And of course, I'm the guy on the left if you couldn't figure that out. And then prior to Workfolio, I guess you could say my claim to fame, if I have one, was at the age of 30, I became the youngest CIO for a public company, $1 billion or size in America. And prior to that, I went to military high school. And so I sort of have this interesting background in marketing and technology and design. And so it's been a fantastic journey. So that's about me. Workfolio itself, So Workfolio, as Christy mentioned, my company makes professional visibility applications. We actually have 5 applications. One is not listed there, which I'll just mention. We have one B2B, B2C application, and the other ones are B2B applications. So our first application actually was a personal website builder for career advancement. So we power more personal websites for executives, thought leaders, job seekers in the world than anyone else. And we work with the world's leading outplacement and staffing firms on that product. So that's one that's not on there. The other ones, directory, profile intelligence, client microsites, and case studies. I'll talk a little bit at the end of the presentation about those and some of the work that we're doing with other actually very leading firms and some of the, and especially in professional services. In addition to working with some of the largest, most respected firms in the world and our products and how we actually use that, they're customer partners with us, and that's how we create the technologies that we've built. We have over 1 million users in 100 countries and 13 technology patents, which of course, if you know anything about patents, technology patents are the hardest to get. And so we're very proud of that. And then last month, we officially launched a partnership with Zweig Group. We're very excited to be working with Zweig on a number of initiatives and sharing findings and research and data, and then helping the AEC firms embrace some of the challenges, especially post-COVID-19. So my presentation is really broken out into 3 parts very briefly. So we all know COVID-19 has forever changed B2B customer pursuits. So really the first part of this is I want to understand, as I tried to understand ourselves here, exactly what has changed. How has B2B changed post-COVID-19? And so there's some fantastic data that we have obtained, and some of it very recently, in fact, that I'd love to share with everybody. And then secondly is rethinking digital in a new virtual sales world. So as you'll see in the stats, it started before COVID-19, certainly the case now. B2B sales is becoming very virtual and very digital. So understanding, just rethinking some of our strategies around digital, I think is important. And then lastly, the new B2B Sales Toolkit additions to that. And specifically, I wanted to talk about some things that maybe firms aren't thinking about that are a little bit outside of their, kind of regular wheelhouse, if you will. So we'll talk about some of those technologies, some of our own, and then some that are not. So kind of going into part 1 here, there was a study done 7 days ago. The results were released, were shared with us from McKinsey and Company. They conducted an in-depth study of B2B buyer sentiment following COVID-19. Their data, combined with some of our own research and studies, have really revealed some of the new world that we're trying to conduct business in today. So let me just jump right into that. So one of the very first data points that McKinsey reported on, and I really thought this was particularly alarming, was that only 20% of B2B buyers ever want to interact with sales reps in person, even post-COVID-19 model. So this idea that, hey, we're going to send sales reps to meet clients face-to-face, certainly not the case today, and definitely looks like it's not going to be the case in the future. So what does that mean? Firms can no longer rely on meeting prospects face-to-face. They have to find alternatives to replace that engagement, that customer intimacy. Second statistic, which I thought was really interesting, this was, of course, we all know video conference is becoming kind of the new way of communication. Buyers feel that 80% of them feel that it's more helpful than audio only, yet only 56% of calls right now are through video conference. So basically this just says, hey, if you're not using video conference, you should be. Next one here, 99% of B2B buyers claim they will make a purchase decision in a digital self-serve model. So really, this is saying that what would take personal interaction before no longer does, and almost everyone is willing to make a purchase decision, B2B purchase decision, which is even more different than of course bigger prices than of course we would as consumers, but B2B purchase decisions with only digital interactions. So that's actually good news for everybody. And then 51% of B2B buyers conduct more research post-COVID-19. I expect this number to go up. Everybody does research, of course, before making a purchase decision. And now what this research is showing is that 51% of people are doing more research now, which kind of makes sense because they're not interacting with salespeople as much directly anymore, which would traditionally help them through some of the buying journey there. Good product and service content is more important than ever pre-COVID-19. That's basically what this is saying. And then 95% of buyers go with organizations that can provide relative informative content at each stage of the buying journey. So again, looking at your content and looking at your buying journey, your sales funnel, if you want to talk about it in those terms, is making sure you're adding value at every single stage. You've got new relative content at every stage of that buying journey, and it's not just all at the front end where you're just trying to fill the top of the funnel, right? So we've got content that's strategically placed throughout that journey. And then coming to the end here, 82% of customers engaged with at least 5 pieces of content from the provider before purchasing from them. And I expect this number to go up. This was this year, this data point, but it was kind of like mid-COVID. So I think this number will even go higher. But content becoming important, the importance of content overall is certainly a theme of this data. And then this is our own information. Our own study that we have gotten from our customers that use our applications, and that is 98% of buyers prefer to receive sales material through websites than email. And we're going to talk about why that is here in a few minutes. But basically what this means is a firm should be thinking about ways to reduce their email communications with prospects. And then lastly, I think this 91% say the new sales model is here to stay post-COVID-19. So when I originally saw these numbers, I was like, hey, okay, this is all temporary, it's going to change. And in fact, 91% of buyers say, hey, this is going to be the way of the future, even once we get past COVID-19, we have a cure in place. What this means is that investments in digital engagement tools for the customer journey will have a long shelf life. Again, that's good news for us because we're looking at changing, kind of retuning where we're investing along the customer journey. And then this one from Zweig Group, Christy mentioned it earlier, but the number one concern of AEC firms resulting from COVID-19 is just the ability to get new work. And of course, that's no surprise, right? We're looking at backlog reductions. We're looking at major impacts to the sales funnel and conversions, and how we're actually sourcing new deals. So what does all this mean? Well, we think it really means two things, two main learnings from this. One is that there's fewer prospects at the top of the sales funnel means that optimizing win rates becomes even more important than ever. So we've got to take better care of the prospects that actually enter our top of our sales funnel to get more of them to convert if we want to maintain even prior revenue levels, right? And certainly if we want to grow, that means we really got to get good at converting these opportunities that enter our funnel. And then secondly, with such a high percentage of the new buyer experience being digital, firms really should be auditing every step of their digital customer journey and looking for tools and optimizations to strengthen it. This is really important. This goes to point number one. If we're gonna say, hey, we want to optimize the funnel as much as we can and get a higher win rate, well, what does that mean? Well, guess what? Everything's digital now. So we have to really look at every single step with a microscope of the digital journey that our customers are going through, and making sure that we're doing exactly what we should be doing at every stage. So one of the things that I'm always interested in is, okay, besides what everybody's doing right now, and these are questions that we always ask the team at Workfolio, and this to come up with some innovative new ways of thinking, is besides what everybody's doing right now, what else can we do? And so the new thing, of course, that everybody's doing, or a high percentage, I guess 56% should be higher, is that people are looking at video conferencing as a major replacement to the face-to-face, the engagement, prior engagement that we would have with customers, the traditional engagement. Video conferencing has replaced that, obviously. So what else is there? So we think there's really three components that firms should be looking at. Three things to supplement video conferencing, which can really add value. And one of them, and this is kind of a small point, but really wanted to, I think there's some great insights here, and that is adding personality insights to better inform the new prospect communication. So there's a tool out there we're going to talk about in a minute that is really great for this. So if you're not using this tool, if your salespeople aren't using this tool, you really should be, because it's fantastic. It gives you the insights. It gives you that feeling of you really understand the person before, without having met them face to face, right? Really tough to get a sense of somebody's personality just over the phone or just through video. So having some scientific tools at your disposal to understand someone's personality and their likely buying behavior and the way that they think about engaging with your company is really important. Second thing is aligning staff profiles to the client, project, and buyer personas. So we're going to talk about the importance, especially now, of staff profiles, your staff bios, how they're representing themselves, how they're representing their work at your company, are critical parts of the buying experience. And so we'll talk about how we can optimize and do a better job of those. And then lastly, using client microsites to better digitally engage prospects with sales content. So this is the big one. And we'll talk about this towards the end, that if we're looking at the customer experience journey, then microsites is fast becoming one of the best ways to supplement that experience journey from video. So going to the first one here, and we call it the new B2B Sales Toolkit. And there's a lot of tools that we can be talking about. Sadly, we only have time to talk about a few, but this is definitely one, and it's not from us, but we use it a lot at Workfolio, and this is called Crystalnose. So some of you may be familiar with this already, but what Crystalnose is it's an application, it's a plugin that sits on your browser. And when you're looking at somebody's LinkedIn profile, for example, it'll actually scrape the data from the LinkedIn profile and then run it through a high degree of analytics on what that person's personality is, what motivates them, how they think, what's important, how best to communicate them during the sales process. So I just had a meeting last week with 6 executives at a multinational consulting firm, and I researched every one of those executives, ran them through the Crystalnose application just so that I could see just what kind of personalities that they have. And it was incredibly important because everybody had a different personality. And so when I was talking to them directly, individually, if they had questions, I knew kind of how best to frame the responses. So this is a great tool. Also, and we'll talk about this in the next section, the Crystalnose application can also benefit you as a firm in structuring your staff profile so that they are ideally crafted for the type of customer that you have. So speaking of staff visibility, we've talked to hundreds and worked with hundreds of firms on helping them make their staff visibility better, helping optimize their staff profiles for the sales process. And there's a few myths that I'd like to dispel, that common myths that we run into. So one of them is, and we hear this sometimes, is our customers buy our brand, not our people. And what's really interesting is a number of studies have said that staff profiles are often the first step in the trust building process for customers. So they're looking at your staff profiles, they're reading them, they're seeing, okay, who is this person and who's on the team and who am I likely going to be interacting with? And then another thing that kind of dispels this notion of brand over people is that 89% of customers have bought from someone else when their primary relationship switches employers. So this is probably not surprising, right? If your favorite salesperson goes to someone else and you can buy similar things from them, you're likely to follow that new salesperson to the new company. The second myth that we see a lot of here is staff bios aren't that important to our prospects. Boy, this couldn't be any more wrong. 91% of B2B customers research people online before doing business with them. And then 95% of professionals have social media profiles. So they have a presence online. And if you're leaving your prospects to just see to view profiles of folks on their social media, and not take kind of ownership and control of that for the firm's business, that presents a lot of risks, So definitely number 2 is a myth. And then the last one is one bio for everybody is fine. Successful selling is partially about reducing deal risk, and we've done a lot of research on this that suggests that presenting bios with content that doesn't directly relate to what the client's need is can decrease win rate as much as 30%. So there's an example here. I'll step outside of the AEC industry for a second to tell you about a law firm that we were talking to, where they had a corporate prospect come to them and say, hey, we need litigation attorneys. And if you know anything about law firms, you know that they all have attorney bios on their website, and these things are very lengthy. Every single piece of experience, every case is anonymized, every publication is on these bios. And oftentimes too, people have more than one set of expertise. So in the case of this law firm, they were sending people that had litigation experience, but they also had things like contract experience, M&A experience. And so when the company prospect got the bios, they saw a little bit of litigation, but they also saw a bunch of stuff that they weren't interested in. And so they declined. They said, well, these folks are jacks of all trades and masters of none kind of syndrome. So later when the firm went back and asked them, why did you not choose us? That was the reason given. So this kind of thing can create funnel leakage. And so staff profiles are super important to get right. And one bio does not fit all. So one of the things we're helping with firms is structuring multiple profile variants that are really tailored for the types of client engagement, project, region, practice area, whatever it might be, so that what they're seeing is just content that relates to solving their problem. And along this line, Workfolio, over the past few years, we've been working on a piece of technology and methodology, what we call Workfolio Profile Intelligence. So recognizing that this is a problem for firms, and that firms really struggle with, well, gee, what should our bios contain? And how should they be different for the different types of clients? So we have built a solution for this that really helps them understand that. So this combines things like Crystalnose that I shared with you earlier. So you can run your staff profiles through that application, see what kind of personality traits that those profiles are signaling. And then also we have another service provider that does independent reviews of photos. So, I mean, this is how granular we're getting with these things. So photos, if you don't know, a good profile photo can result in 21 times more views of someone's profiles than a bad one. So profile photos are the single most important element on anyone's profile, and most of them are bad. And we are bad as individuals looking at our own photos to say, hey, that's a good profile photo, when in fact, because we see ourselves so differently than everybody else, you really need an independent service that analyzes these photos across multiple categories and provides some analytics on it. So that's something that we're plugging into the profile intelligence process. Another part of this is the multiple profile variants. So that top right screenshot there, this is where, unlike a lot of kind of staff directory applications that are around, which have a one-to-one relationship between the person and the profile, you really need an application that has a one-to-many relationship. So you can store multiple profile variants and you can reuse those profile variants depending on the client's need. So that's really what profile intelligence is all about. And so let's talk next about, go back to the digital buying experience and talk about email. So I'm going to pick on email for a minute, because email, as it turns out, is the enemy of a customer digital buying experience journey. And there's a few reasons for that. The first is email is plagued with technical issues. So file size limits, spam blockers, version control issues stemming from multiple discussion threads, just all sorts of issues, mobile issues, some things not mentioned here. Really, email is just technically not a great way to communicate, even though everybody uses it. On average, professionals receive 180 emails per day. Decision makers receive a lot more than this. So just kind of, you're sending an important document to a prospect, know that that email is competing with hundreds of emails a day. So getting the attention can be quite a challenge. And then really, I think this is the most important. When we send email, we have absolutely no insights into who's viewed the content, how often, and for how long. So this is especially alarming when you consider all of the metrics that we apply to all of our sales and marketing efforts, from outbound outreach and click rates and open rates to inbound stuff. And are we capturing client leads and lead magnets and heat maps on our website and content marketing and HubSpot and everything we're doing around the social media. All is tremendously analyzed and tons of metrics. But as soon as we get a prospect in the sales funnel and we send them an email, we have absolutely no idea what's happening. We have no idea if they opened it. We have no idea how long they spent looking at the content, who they shared it with, how often they came back. And so that is a tremendous lost opportunity on informing the sales and marketing folks as to how your content is being received, how your pitches are working or not working. I mean, the only thing we know is if we won the deal or not, right? So so email is tremendously bad at that. And then lastly, email is boring and tedious and places your content in the context and an overall unpleasant user experience. I don't know about you, but I hate my inbox. I really do. And I hate going in there, you know, and you got to do it. It's like the source of pain every morning, right? And so right now, so much of the digital buying experience is tied through email that is unpleasant experience for everybody. So the goal should be, we need to be reducing our reliance on email as much as we possibly can. So here's where we want to talk about client microsites. So in the process of us working with consulting firms all the way up to, I think, so Manpower is one of the largest ones we work with, some of the practice areas of the Big Four, mid-market firms as well. And then also more recently, some AE firms we're working with. One of the things that has stood out as an option in collaboration with our customer partners is this idea of client microsites. So what client microsites are private co-branded websites that engage prospects digitally with sales content. So again, as we're thinking about the customer journey and doing things that supplement video conference, this is one of the big ones. And there's some tremendous interest in client microsites right now to the effect that one of the things we've heard from Big Four practice area leaders is they think that client microsites are going to be the standard, lowercase, not necessarily our product, although we are currently in the lead here. They think client microsites, lowercase, are going to be the standard way that prospects receive sales content within 2 years. So, so this is our particular solution at this that we've been working on. We have client microsites, what we call version 1.0 right now, which was an early attempt to help firms create these very quickly, spin them up for clients. And then we have a new version that we collected tons of feedback over the past few months, especially. So we have a new version that's going to include a lot more features. But this really allows the firms to create highly engaging customer experiences for sales content and provide that unique insights into how people are interacting with your content. So now you can put team bios, case studies, white papers, product sheets, videos, files, links, etc., featured documents like pitch decks, proposals. We're also going to have, we're doing an integration with like DocuSign so customers can execute the agreements directly from the microsite. And what's cool too is that whenever there's new content placed, this becomes the hub for that new content, and clients can get notified, prospects can get notified that, hey, there's a new piece of content, there's a new version of that document. And when they log in, they see also what's new. So we're trying to find out exactly how many pieces of content that buyers really come in contact with during the sales journey. And we're hearing anywhere from, half a dozen at minimum to dozens of pieces of content that might live on a microsite. And right now we've got the average creation time down to about 7 minutes. But when you send this to a client, what they see is something that's highly tailored for them. It's kind of co-branded. You'll see in this case, the client is American Express. And so they think that you spent a lot more time on this than you actually did, which is of course a welcome thing. So advantages of client microsites over traditional methods of communication. One is the big one, of course, providing analytics and insights to improve pitches. Now you can understand how people are interacting with your content, your team. If there's a particular team member that is getting a lot of clicks to their profile, that can tell you something about what that client's interest is, what they're interested in. And so you can probe and ask more questions about that particular, what that particular person's expertise was in. Also, you can send data back to the CRM. So for predicting client win rates and doing a better job of forecasting revenue, this is something that can happen here as well, because if you think about it, if you put a microsite together and client goes in there maybe 3 times, that tells you something about the percentage likelihood of that deal closing, versus if you put your sales content together in a microsite and the client's in there, 120 visits in 3 weeks, right? So a lot of that data can be informative for revenue forecasting, but also if you're in the services area and you're providing professional services, also workforce utilization planning, because companies don't have endless resources. So sometimes they do need to predict what projects they're going to be landing when. Second major advantage of microsites is that microsites organize all the pitch content in a single place for customers and for buyers. And so they're not having to search their email. They're not having to go, do I have the right version? They've got a single link that they go to and they log in, and all of the content is there. You call it sort of the single source of truth if you want, but it really saves a lot of confusion. And also they can invite other colleagues at the organization to look at the same content. So it just becomes a real convenience for them. It saves them a lot of time of having to circulate your content for you inside the organization. Third advantage is that microsites are giving organizations additional tools for client engagement, decision buyer engagement. So things like chat bots, live chat, quick surveys, those types of things can be embedded in microsites. And of course, you're not getting those in emails. So let's say, as the prospect is looking at content on your microsite, like they have a question, well, they can just pull up the chat function. And even if you don't have that chat function manned, it'll kick off a notification to you that the question's being asked, but you're not forcing the buyer to have to go back to their email, right? They can do it directly from within the microsite. Kind of nice. And then lastly, and this is not to be understated, but it really differentiates you from competitors. So until microsites become the standard, which we fully predict they will become, right now, the early adopters are getting a big bump in competitive differentiation because it really helps your firm stand out from competitors. Very few companies in the space right now, especially AEC, which we're just starting to work with, are doing this. So you're going to get a really nice response from your prospects. Oh, gee, that's awesome. They're not used to seeing this. So in the world of sales and marketing, there's a concept called pattern disruption, which is really how you break the patterns of people saying no and just treating you like everyone else. This is one great tool for that, and one highly visible tool at a key point in the buyer journey. And then, of course, the biggest thing is, so we ask all of our customers who deploy microsites, hey, what is it doing for your business? What's the net effect on revenue? What's the net effect on win rate? And on average, microsites are improving the win rate by 17%. That is the lowest we've encountered is 4%, and that was a gigantic firm. So we helped steer the cruise ship 1 degree to starboard. And then for smaller firms, it can be as high as 38%. This also correlates to what your current win rate is now. So usually for firms with lower win rates, we're going to have microsites are going to have a higher impact on that. So if you're doing 25, 30%, you're likely to see a higher win rate. If you are already sitting at 80, 90%, you're one of the lucky ones. Then the percentage of increase certainly would be lower in those cases. But regardless, there is an uptick in proposal win rate. Almost done here, and then we'll kind of get to some questions. I just wanted to flash the screen. Everybody asked us, well, how all your stuff work together. So we've created what we call the Workfolio Pursuit Stack. So if you're familiar with tech companies, they're always talking about their tech stack. So we've sort of borrowed a term from that world. But all these applications work together seamlessly. Two applications I haven't even talked about today for time. Workfolio case studies. So we're actually building an interactive case study builder. Help firms, if you've ever done case studies, you know how difficult it is to create those. So we have an application currently in beta, and we're doing some pilots with some firms where they're able to create the case study catalog. And then not right now, but soon we're going to have an integration between that and microsites. So if you have case studies in our platform and you have microsites, you'll be able to just click and choose which case studies apply to that particular client when you're putting the microsite together. And then at the very bottom there is a resource directory. We haven't talked about this, but we've built a directory application that houses all of the profiles for individuals, again, one to many. So it's a very unique directory application in that it can help you manage all those different profiles, create unified profile templates, create the PDFs. You know, clients are always saying, hey, send me PDFs of profiles. You can generate those directly in here. You can also have internal only profiles and public profiles if you have a website that you're publishing profiles to. And it contains things like content approvals. So everybody can maintain their own profiles, but because they're client facing, we needed to build a way that provided some comfort to companies that those profiles didn't contain sensitive content that clients couldn't see. So content approvals is an optional feature within the directory as well. So that's the Workfolio Pursuit Stack. And before we jump to questions, I did want to share with everybody a session coming up next week, Kelly Steckel's session on Make Every Communication Count in the New Normal. Kelly and I have chatted. She's got some fantastic content and really a great perspective, especially for AEC firms and quite a bit of background working with AEC firms. So I highly recommend her session. I think it would be a great add-on supplement to my session today if you can make hers next week. So yeah, with that, it's open for questions. I'd like to call this Ask Me Anything AMA. And as the illustration indicates, I always try to think of something clever to say. So I will do my best if there are any questions. So I think Christy and Chad maybe need to jump in here, or I can look in.
Hey there. We've got a couple questions that just came in now. The first question is, will this microsite work with any browser, old and new?
The answer is not all browsers. There are some, I think, I can double check with the tech team later on this, but I think we don't support anything prior to IE9 for Microsoft, and there's some Chrome versioning, some really old browsers. Generally now, the browsers have gotten a lot better at updating through the iOS, so especially like Microsoft's browsers. So even if Microsoft will auto update a lot of these, try to keep them as current as possible. It does work with a very high percentage of browsers, and we've looked at some data, and the old browsers represents a very small fraction of the current computer user base. But we do know there are some companies that are still stuck in old browser world. So I don't know the exact versions, but I do know we can go back definitely a few years, maybe 10 years. Don't quote me on that, but certainly there's a cutoff, because some of the tools we're using do use some new-ish browser capabilities.
We have another question that says, how do you direct clients to microsites if not through email?
Yeah, I love this question. It goes straight to the point. And the answer is you do share the microsite link through email. The prospect only gets the link, and then they can click on it and sign on. So every time that there is, and this is a feature that's coming up, but every time that there's new content on the microsite, it will email them to let them know. But again, it's emailing the link and not the content. So that's really the difference. And then what you can explain to prospects, we recommend, is just bookmark that link, because the average sales cycle is what, 8 to 12 months usually, depending on the type of project. So it's going to be a while that they're engaging with that microsite. They can just bookmark it.
We have another question on that, which is, can you show a live example of a microsite? And then follow up to that is, how much does it normally cost for Crystalnose and Workfolio?
So the live version, definitely willing to go through some live examples. Probably should do that offline, just because they do take a little bit of time to kind of explain. So if you'd like to contact me or the Workfolio team, would be happy to kind of walk you through a few examples and answer any questions. I didn't want to necessarily dive into the actual tech today, because there is a lot there that to really go through, not so much from the client's perspective, but the options you have in setting them up. So that's one. And then what was the second one? I already forgot. The pricing.
Crystalnose and Workfolio cost range.
Yeah, so Crystalnose is not very expensive. I should know the exact price, but I want to say it was somewhere in the 30, and they probably have this published on their website, $30 or $40 a month type of price point. And I don't think there was any limit to the number of profiles you could pull up, something like that. Don't quote me on the exact numbers, but I think that's fairly close. And then as far as our pricing is concerned, we have it really varies by firm size. We have an ROI pricing ROI calculator, so it's not very expensive, by the way. So we try to make this very affordable, especially now in COVID-19. So depending on firm size, and happy to, if you want to reach out to me separately and give me some information, we can get you some specific pricing on microsites. But it's generally, when we look at the cost of microsites to the return on investment, generally the ROI is in excess of 1,000%. It's fairly ridiculous. We've had a lot of companies tell us, hey, you should think about raising the price, but we really just don't want to do that right now because we're trying to make it as affordable as possible. So partially depends on company size. How many bios are you or people are you actually loading into the directory? How many microsites are you wanting to create each month? And so yeah, if you send me some information, we'll get you the pricing details on that.
There's kind of a related question there, which says, is there a dollar value potential project threshold you'd recommend before bothering to create a microsite?
It's funny you mentioned that because we had absolutely no intention of firms who were working with consumers to do microsites. But in fact, there has been quite a bit of interest lately of companies who are selling to individuals various services, that even if it's just like a life insurance policy or something, and creating a microsite for a person. So one of the things that the new version is going to do is make it a little bit better and easier, so that if you're a single person, you're pitching individuals. So the price point really can be very low. I would say you're probably looking at north of $1,000, few hundred, $500, $1,000 is probably where the ROI, without really studying the numbers, probably where the ROI comes into play. But with our sort of individual version, our super low cost option down the road that we're going to be releasing, we'll try to drive that cost even lower. So, or that kind of deal value, if you want to call it, even lower. But yeah, it doesn't take a lot. If you're doing in the thousands of dollars, usually it's a no-brainer. And of course, we have a lot of firms that are doing 5, 6, 7-figure deals, of course, and then it makes obvious sense in those cases.
We have 2 questions here. One says, how does this scale for small firms? Does it take a large amount of staff or resources to implement? And then another person asked, who maintains the microsites? Is it the customer or Workfolio?
So these are self-serve applications, firstly. So we give you the keys, we set you up, we teach you how to learn it, and then you can create microsites to your heart's content. They generally take, like I said, 7 minutes for one person to create. So a more sophisticated, longer deal project, of course, it might take a few more minutes than that by the time you upload all the content. But it's really just one person. We have most of the microsites that are being created right now are being created by 1 to 3 person marketing teams, even for large companies, small companies. Sometimes it's just a single person that's creating them. And they're really easy to create. Although we released this a little less than a year ago, version 1.0, we've already helped create tens of thousands of microsites in that time. So yeah, it's super easy to do.
That's awesome. We have a question here that says, how many customers were surveyed for the microsites, or in parentheses, Workfolio customers? So for example, to give those stats on the win rates.
Yeah, the answer is about 25 in our first iteration. We plan to do a much more sophisticated survey later. But 25, if you know anything about statistics and standard deviation, I think it's 25 is a 7% standard deviation, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So we just wanted to kind of put the windsock in the air and kind of see, which way the wind was blowing on this. And then we're gearing up for a much more in-depth study that's going to probably take place towards the end of this year in Q1. So, but we definitely have enough data that we feel very confident in the numbers.
That's awesome. Somebody asked question about the time frame of microsites. Do firms using this start implementing their microsites after an initial introduction? A lot of times AE clients don't allow communication with them once the RFP comes out.
Yeah, let me just, I'm reading this question just so I make sure I understand. Yes, okay, so kind of 2 questions there after start using my, yes, I think I know where you're going with this. So let me handle the first one first, or the last one first. It's a little bit and it's around RFPs. So this comes up quite a bit. In fact, one of the questions is, hey, for companies that have put out RFPs and you have to do sort of like the RFP response in the platform, right? And this is something that we're all sort of used to, or a lot of firms are used to seeing. Obviously, a microsite would not be used at that stage. However, after that, firms that are shortlisted usually get invited to do orals, right? Oral presentations, pitches after that, once you're shortlisted. So at that stage is when you can usually introduce microsites, and the buying companies usually do allow for email exchange and other information exchange at that stage. So one of the things we are looking at, though, is can we integrate microsites into some of those more popular RFP tools so that you can, in fact, kind of use microsites as a way to supply the information to the RFP tools. And then once you're shortlisted, the microsite is available for the buying company to see. So there's a bunch of stuff kind of peeling the onion a little bit on that. We're really exploring. But fortunately, it's not 100%. Our advice to firms is, hey, any chance you get to create a microsite, whether it's you've been shortlisted and you're getting to the oral stage, or if they're not doing a mandated submission through RFP portal type of situation, you probably want to be doing microsites, because that's an opportunity to really affect the win rate on those opportunities. And then, does that cover Christy, do you think that covers the first part of the question, or am I missing something there? So I want to make sure.
So.
Okay.
For the next question that we have, we said, somebody says, can you explain the profile subject a little bit more? Are you talking about team bios on company websites, LinkedIn, personal Facebook pages, etc.? And how do you separate personal versus business? Or is that not really realistic?
Yeah, so really what this is most of the firms that most companies have team bios. Even if they're not on the website, they have bios of their key executives, of their project leads, so on. And we're finding increasingly product companies also have this. Although obviously professional services really dominates. They live they live in this world where they have to have profiles. If you are a company that does have to have profiles, or you want to have profiles, and we know that buyers looking at profiles is one of the first steps in their buying journey, then it's really important to get those profiles right. And they do deviate from personal profiles a bit. Obviously, everybody owns their own LinkedIn profile, so no company is going to force me to change that if I don't want to. But the official profile for the company is something that the company can influence a great deal and can optimize a great deal. And of course, they can make suggestions, and we recommend that they do make suggestions to team members to say, hey, you might consider these changes to your social profiles, and then let them make that decision. And a lot of employees, especially, they'll look at those suggestions and say, yeah, sure, that makes a lot of sense. So companies generally don't ask them to do things that they're not comfortable with. So they can live separately, but they also can merge quite a bit, is the answer to that.
We have a great question here, and I think this is a tough one though, but it says, how do you see the digital experience of buying translating to the AEC world, where in-person isn't just a norm, but a culture?
Boy, you guys are going to tell me, because you're on the front line of this, and I'm very curious to see, based on the data points that we saw earlier, and the McKinsey study did cover a portion of the data is from AEC firms. So I know it was included in the data set. It's going to be really fascinating to watch how this impacts AEC firms going forward. And I suspect that they'll have some immunity because of the tradition, in the convention, but they won't have 100% immunity. I think that this is going to impact a lot of firms, and it just may take a little bit longer than others. But I'd be really curious, if firms would tell me, hey, we're seeing this already, we're not seeing this. I'm really curious to learn from them and you guys what you're seeing in the industry.
The last question that we have, I think you've answered some of this already, but it's just more about how you would use this when responding to an RFP that dictates a specific process.
Yep. So at some point, there's human beings that make a decision, and at some point you can communicate with them. Unfortunately, the RFP does block a little bit of this for a particular stage, but usually when you get shortlisted, and my wife is a executive for a firm, and they're really strict on this. But once you're shortlisted, you're invited to present. Used to be in person, now it's virtually, of course. And then you can communicate with the buying executives. So sometimes I think that's the case a lot of times. At some point, there's human beings that have to interact with each other to make a decision. And I think that's when you get to that point, microsites make a lot of sense.
Awesome. Okay, well, unless we have any last questions come in, that was actually quite a few of them there. Sorry for that rapid fire approach.
Yeah, I love the tough ones. You guys are awesome.
And
yeah, leave behind. Yeah, it certainly could be. You can control how long you leave behind, by the way, because you can turn it off. You can say, hey, I'm not going to leave it behind forever. So you just cut off access. It's kind of nice.
That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And were you guys able to look at we had a couple questions coming in the chat.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep, we got all of those. The last one that we have on there is about possibly including a video of like the assembly of a microsite or something after this presentation. And I think we can have those people reach out to you directly and get.
Yeah, we'll get you some intel on that if you want some more information. Happy to share that. And happy to talk to anybody, by the way, even if you just want to have a dialogue. One of the things we love is just talking to firms and understanding their challenges. So, even if you think our solutions aren't right for you, we're coming in contact with a lot of different applications, by the way. So sometimes we can give you some ideas and other tools to consider for different challenges. So, that's we're happy to do that at any point.
Oh, we have one last question. Said, talking about using this for recruiting?
Yes. So we have several firms doing that actually, and they're also using microsites internally. So there's some weird use cases that you never think of when you build these things. The companies kind of go, oh, can we use it for this or that? So we have a company using microsites just for investor relations. So not something that we would have considered in the past. So certainly recruiting and our tools are being used by recruiters right now. We have a whole separate kind of solution set for recruiters. So it wasn't really the topic for today, but definitely a world and that we understand very well.
Okay. Well, that wraps it up. It is 2:00. Thank you all so much for attending this session. It was lots of fun and very informative. If you have any more questions and want to get a follow-up, please feel free to reach out to me directly at czweig@zweigroup.com, or Charles. His information is here up on the screen, and I'm sure he would love to talk to you more about this, all the really cool options that he has.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming and listening to me for an hour. Really appreciate it, and honored to be here. And Christy and gang, thanks so much for the invitation, and look forward to chatting with anybody who wants to take conversation further. So thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Christy.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay.